after we have established our theory of probable cause, what's our next step? Well, our next step is going to be testing our theory to determine the cause. So if we have our theory, then we can't just go right into implementing our steps in order to resolve that problem. We actually need to do something in order to test and see if that theory is actually the case. So we go back into our case of our IP address setting. We go back to our case of our person not being able to connect to the network, and we say, okay, well, our person isn't able to connect to the network. They said that they recently had their IP address settings statically changed, so let's go to those static settings and see if we just set them to an automatically to get the IP address, or if we change those static settings, if we'll be able to connect to the internet. Because my theory is that those static settings are wrong. So we go to we change to our DHCP, we change to automatically receive IP address settings, and it works. We're able to get an internet connection. We're able to get a network connection. So that's great. We've confirmed our theory. But just confirming our theory and testing our theory isn't enough. We need to go on to our next steps. So we can't leave this person on automatically assigning themselves an IP address forever. Maybe we the network that we're connected to has subnets that allow for DHCP, but if a computer automatically receives IP address settings, they're on a slightly different network than the rest of us. They're getting different IP addressing information than everyone else to keep computers that automatically connect and get IP addresses separate from our corporate computers that have static IP addresses. So we need to figure out, we determined that our theory was correct. It is something to do with their static IP address. It is something to do with their static settings. So we need to figure out what our next steps are to resolve those static settings issue. Maybe we need to go to our network team and we need to get the static IP settings for this person and put them in. Or maybe we need to go to our documentation and pull this person's static IP settings. Or maybe even go to our DNS or our DHCP server and see if there's a reservation for them, or see what their settings should be, essentially. So we need to go to our next steps, and we need to determine how to fix. We need to determine what those next steps are and how we can fix our underlying issue and not just cover up some of our symptoms. It'd be like if you went to the doctor and you had nausea, you had some really bad nausea, and then the doctor just gives you medicine just to make the nausea go away. Well, they fixed your symptoms, but the underlying problem might be a stomach ulcer. And you want them to fix the problem. You don't want them just to cover up the symptoms, because the problem is still there. The same in this case. We don't want to just fix the symptoms. We don't want to just fix the symptoms. We want to treat the illness. So if our theory is not confirmed, however, we either need to go back a step and create a new theory, or we might need to even escalate this problem. If we're working on a help desk, we may be given a time limit as for how long we can troubleshoot an issue. We may have other calls waiting. If we're on a tier 1 or even a tier 2 where we're doing desktop support, and we are told that, okay, why don't you go and try to solve this issue, and we work with it for a couple days and we figure out, okay, I've done everything in my capacity to try to solve this problem, or I'm running out of time and this person needs to get work done, so I'm going to escalate this up another level. So if our theory is not confirmed, we can either create a new theory or we could try and escalate this issue. So then we have establishing a plan of action and identifying effects. So after we have tested our theory and we've determined the cause, then we want to establish a plan in order to fix the issue, in order to treat the illness. So we need to remember, however, we need to identify effects, and we need to remember our law, and remember that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Well, not really. That has to do with physics, but we're going to apply it here, and we're going to say that whenever we're working on computers and we perform an action, most likely something's going to happen as a result. We change our background settings and we have a new background. We take out a network interface card and replace it with a new network interface card. Now we have a new MAC address. We change some IP settings on our computer. We may need to change some settings in our DNS, or we may need to change some DHCP settings. So we can't just go, head first and start changing settings and replacing hardware and replacing cables, we need to actually understand that there might be additional effects that go along with that. We always want to back up data and we want to back up settings. We back up data because we don't want to encounter data loss. We want to be able to have that data somewhere else just in case something goes wrong. And we also back up settings in case, well, just in case we make the issue worse. If we make the issue worse, we don't want to leave someone in a situation where they are worse off than where they were before. This isn't a cleaning your room type scenario where things have to get worse before they get better. We don't want to take a computer that's not able to connect to the internet and now they don't even have an internet browser, or now they aren't even able to, if before they weren't able to connect to the internet, but they still could connect to file servers, and now after talking with us and us troubleshooting, they can't connect to anything, then we've made the issue a bit worse. So if we're constantly troubleshooting issues and trying to help people and then making their problem worse, we're going to notice a lot of people griping and complaining and asking to speak to other desktop support representatives because the last time we tried to help them, it didn't work out so great. So we need to make sure that we're backing up data and we're also backing up settings. So we've established our plan of action. We've identified some potential effects. Maybe we needed to change a network interface card, and so this person had a DHCP reservation based on their MAC address. So when we replace their network interface card, we're going to need to go and change their DHCP reservation. We're going to need to change their MAC address. So when they receive their IP address settings from the DHCP server, they get the correct settings. So we need to make sure that we're identifying potential effects. So we're going to plan our actions step by step. We're going to say, okay, I'm going to order the new network interface card. I'm going to determine the MAC address of the new network interface card. Then I'm going to take their computer offline, and then I'm going to go on the DHCP server and change the settings, and then I'm going to install their new network interface card and then bring their computer back up online. We want to plan out our steps step by step before we just start doing things. In the case of replacing hardware like routers or bridges or switches, we want to know the network environment and know the requirements of the device before we just go out and buy a device. We don't want to go out and spend $2,000 for a network buying 50 switches all across a network, only to get there and find out that they needed 50 24-port switches. And none of my switches have 24 ports. I bought a model that had that were more robust switches, but they didn't have as many ports on them. We're going to run into an issue. We're not going to have happy clients. So we need to make sure that we're actually planning out everything step by step, that we're actually determining what we need before we get there, and we're not just saying, oh, okay, well, I know I'm going to need a router sometime, so let me just go and buy a decent router, and that way I'll just have it when I get there. Well, you may get there and they say, oh, no, we don't need a router, we need a switch. And you say, oh, man. So you need to be able to get that planned out. And we need to understand that we may not be able to fully resolve the issue. If we are working on a desktop support capacity and we need to replace a network interface card, and then we say, okay, this person has a DHCP reservation, I'm also going to need to change the settings on the DHCP server. We may not have the authority to change DHCP server reservations. We may need to escalate this issue to the next tier by first saying, okay, I'm going to purchase this network interface card and have it in my stock, and once I have it in my stock ready to go, I'm going to escalate to the networking team, and they're going to change the settings on the DHCP server to this correct MAC address. Then I'm going to do the installation and they're going to be good to go. So we need to plan out these steps before we say, oh, okay, let me just swap out the network interface card in your machine, and then say, oh, wait a second, you have a DHCP reservation. Let me call up the network team and see if they can change that for me, and then it turns out they're busy. So we need to make sure that we plan those all ahead and that we get everything laid out and we escalate if necessary.